Hi, Hopi here. I wanted to hop on and talk to you about failure tolerance. And this is a really important consideration when we are moving towards our idea babies. When we're making even tiny shifts in our lives, I always like to come back to what is my failure tolerance? First, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to think about this and be really honest with yourself. What is your tolerance for failure? When you fail, does it ignite you? Does it cause you to do more? Or does it make you want to study what you've been doing and learn from it, change, practice more so that it doesn't happen again? Or does failing send you into a quitting, whining, complaining, making excuses zone so that you send yourself into never wanting to fail again? Be honest here. And I want you to give yourself a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you with your failure tolerance? The reason I am diving into this, as it is such an important part of activating our lives. And it also is connected to the way we make decisions. So we've been talking about decision debt and overcoming obstacles or seeing obstacles as things in our mind that we can remove, move beyond, making decisions as well. When we are lingering in this decision zone without making the decisions, we're not acting. That debt gets bigger. The load gets stronger on us. So all of this, making obstacles in our mind, sitting with decisions but not making them, and the debt load of decision debt getting stronger, all of this is taking up capacity. You're holding on to some serious debt here, and your capacity, all those beach balls, all the energy within you is not available to move towards new visions. It's not available to move towards the way you want your life to look in the future. And as long as you're in this debt mode or not making decisions or feeling all the obstacles in front of you, you're avoiding. And I think a lot of that avoiding comes from a fear of failure. If you're honest, if I'm honest, and this means that your failure tolerance is low. And I want to start with, let's unpack failure a little bit. And the reason to increase your failure tolerance is that failure or failures are harmless. The worst part of a failure, yes, there are consequences to failing through your actions for sure. But really the part of failure that is the hardest for us as humans are the emotions tied to it. All of those uncomfortable emotions. The emotions of feeling like you are not worthy, or you make mistakes, you don't feel good enough. I mean, I could leave you a long, long list. But as we have learned, emotions, when we allow ourselves to feel them, when we allow ourselves to be uncomfortable as opposed to avoiding them and letting that debt of not making decisions or all of those emotions we don't want to feel, and we start to do all of our buffering, whether it's watching TV, overworking, overeating, drinking, all of those things to avoid feeling the feelings or making those decisions, or saying you're confused or too busy. Again, back to capacity. We're filling up our capacity with this churn that isn't moving anywhere. It's not moving us forward. And we know that intuitively, but yet we feel stuck. And many of you have said this, I just feel stuck. I'm not sure what to do. And the question I would ask you is, what would you be willing to do more of if you were willing to fail more? What if your failure tolerance was at like an 8 or a 9 or a 10? That your tolerance to move forward and fail over and over again, to understand what's working, what's not, just imagine what you'd be willing to do. And I'm not talking about being sloppy and just kind of like making decisions willy-nilly or not considering what you're doing. Definitely coming back to your value compass, listening to your intuition, listening to your gut, planning, using tools like the Spark Board to like really map out, what is my idea, baby? Why do I want to do it? Who's going to help me? What are the steps I want to take? Really planning it is helpful. What would you be willing to do if you had a failure tolerance of 10? Because I think a lot of people think about success as the only way that moves us forward. We're like, okay, I just want success, or I want the outcomes, or I want the results. I'll let you in on a little secret. You know what moves us forward? Moving forward and taking action and attempts is what moves us forward. We learn by our attempts. We learn by our actions. And whether or not we get the result we want from that action, we're still moving forward. We're still learning. We're still evolving. So to bring this all together is, we have over the last few months talked a lot about seeing our lives and our capacity as areas that we can continue to grow and evolve if we are willing to make decisions, if we are willing to listen into ourselves, but know why we like to do the things we like to do and what matters to us most, our values. And also seeing like, how is your life set up? How is your current capacity level at the moment? How can you remove some of those beach balls out by making decisions using your compass and values to remove them so that you have space for new, for more, for different results? And failure tolerance is really the strongest muscle that's going to help you motivate and understand the context of why removing things, why making decisions, why overcoming obstacles to create more space matters. And these are some points I want to leave you with that I'm going to share in the hub. We have been taught that failure is something to avoid in our school, by our culture, by the media, sometimes by our parents. And believe you me, having spent years in the education world, coaching other people, top performers in the world, actually, failure is what we are looking for. It's when we know we're taking action. It's when we have a cue that we know if something's working or it's not. That's when it helps us truly grow. I bet if you think about through your life, the biggest failures with those messages, those mistakes, those lessons are the ones that you will never forget. It's how we learn. But many of us stay stagnant, still, stuck, blocked, because we don't want to feel those uncomfortable feelings of failing because we've been taught not to. And so, unfortunately, we avoid growth. Number 2, some of us choose to fail ahead of time. I'll explain what I mean. We think about an idea, baby, or we think about making a decision, or we think about overcoming an obstacle, and we get scared or anxious about what we think might happen. So our mind takes over, and the primitive brain, our nervous system, tries to keep us safe and familiar. And we decide that we don't have any evidence or proof that this is possible. So what we do is we deem it a failure before we even begin. We don't even test it, and we say we failed. And this is so common. And I can't stress enough to be aware of when your brain does this. We don't know how we're going to do things. We don't know how they will turn out until we do them, until we are willing to go through that failure mechanism, that feeling uncomfortable, to move through the emotions and get on the other side and remind ourselves, and this always happens, it isn't as bad as I thought it would be. Wow. And look at the journey of growth that I experienced. Number 3, some of us link failures to ourselves being a failure and not our actions. I want to really reiterate this. So if you think about it in as an equation, it's like you took an action, it didn't work, you deem it a failure. And instead of seeing the action as a failure, as something that didn't work, you turn it inwards and say, I screwed up, I am a failure. I don't ever want to take risks like that again. I don't ever want to put myself out there again. I don't ever want to look like I could fail. So we start to make our world, our decisions, our moves smaller and even more tightly controlled, which often means that we don't evolve or grow that much. The next one I really wanted to stress is our nervous system and emotions taking over us. And this can look like any number of fight or flight responses. It could be freeze, it could be fawn, it could be fight. So when we're moving towards an action and we're feeling a failure, it's not working, instead of taking the emotions and feeling them and then seeing the action as something we're learning through, our nervous system takes over, especially when we're not grounding it, we're not tending to ourselves, we're not making any time to rest, recuperate, build capacity. Our nervous system can take over. And what happens is, for many of us, we freeze. And then there's the action either gets stopped dead before we can even reach the other side and see what the results really were. We freeze midway and it fails, or we decide it's failed and we just completely crumple. I'm sure some of you have experienced this. I know I have. And I would say, last but not least, of the points that I really consider when I'm thinking about why do I want to build a failure tolerance, is we want the results without the process. This is our culture. Give me the pill, give me the quick fix, give me the top 3 steps. You want the money, you want the body, you want the plan, you want the, successful business or project. You want the freedom without going through the journey. And I feel like failing and learning and growing and evolving and feeling those feelings and watching ourselves try and protect ourselves and coming back, that is all part of this beautiful life experience. It's hard, yes. What we gain from building that muscle of moving towards making actions in our lives, and perhaps some of them work, some of them don't. We call them failures. Maybe we can call them a beautiful mistake. I urge you to come up with your word to label when actions don't work in your life. Failure is a pretty strong, loaded term. I know I've used it in this video because we all know what failure looks like, sounds like, and it's something that I think is a very strong thread in our culture. I urge you to come up with, what is your beautiful mistake? What is the term that you want to use? I'd love for you to share. I'd also really appreciate if you could respond with how this lands for you as you're moving towards exploring your idea babies, those sparks, those embryonic ideas and projects swirling around. How can you build up your tolerance for moving towards the unknown? How can you create, build, nurture more capacity in your life? I would love for you to feel into those questions. Feel free to post them in the hub, and I'm in your corner for helping you. Like a personal trainer, we're really going to be lifting our muscles of failure tolerance and learning and growing. And I have to say that declaring and sharing your failures as well is also a very powerful experience, whereby you remove the weight from holding it all inside. And like we say, Sister Speaks for Me, when we share our failures or our missteps or our beautiful mistakes, they're often other people's as well. And we can build community solidarity, and also share what we may have done to pivot that action into success or into a pathway that gives you the results you want. So failure tolerance is not about avoiding failure. It's about leveraging that muscle for personal evolution. It strengthens with practice. It lets us live into the process of life and feel our feelings and build capacity. It's brave, and I know you can do it. With love, I'm in your corner.